Good. Okay. There you go. Well, welcome everybody. You've probably been on a great deal of Zoom calls over the last few years, and we certainly appreciate you taking the time out to join us, especially for such a tough subject that doesn't necessarily have the sexiest title either. After all, there are better ways to bring an audience than our title, A Guide to the Tough Stuff No One Wants to Talk About, and how to create a plan for your aging parents and loved ones. What we'll cover today is an outline. If the one takeaway that you have today is having your consciousness raised for the importance of having a plan versus reacting in crisis, then we've done our job. We're not going to try to fit all of our knowledge into this hour that we have with each other. We're not going to try to discuss every possible situation. What we will offer is an overview, some things to be thinking about. In that way, you know, each of us does kind of have a crystal ball, since we've seen over the years the different things that come up and the need for planning and what needs to be considered in your plan. As we were just speaking about, we will have questions and answers at the end. You can certainly feel free, while it's on top of your mind, to type in a question into the chat, or you could always write it down and then ask it later. And then I'd just like to introduce our three experts, and we will get started. In order of our presenting, first we have Terri Hilliard Olson. Terri is an estate planning attorney at Terri Hilliard PC, with a focus in asset protection, special needs trusts, and family protection for veterans, seniors, and elder care. I'll be speaking next. I'm a residential real estate agent with Keller Williams. I have a senior real estate specialist designation. Besides traditional services of representing buyers and sellers, my specialty and niche is guiding a family when they're considering moving into assisted living and need to sell their home, and also helping families that are looking to downsize. And finally, we have Kelila Heller, is the owner with Tammy Podell of Assisted Living Connections, and they are true experts. They know literally every type of living opportunity when someone has decided they no longer want or can stay in their home. Their knowledge ranges from independent care, residential care, assisted living, and memory care facilities. They know the operators, they know the good ones, the ones that maybe aren't so good. They do an incredible job of finding the right fit for their clients. So let's get started. Our title of the presentation is How to Create a Plan for Your Aging Parents and Loved Ones. It seems fitting to start with Terri, since her practice is estate planning. She has seen it all. Terri?
Before you start, I want to make sure we're recording. Okay, it's just not recording. Okay.
Yep.
Yes. So happy to have all of you here, and I'm so honored to have such skilled presenters with me. And what we do is we take care of our families here in Santa Barbara, Ventura, Los Angeles. We take good care of our families because we kind of cross over our skill set. So for instance, having those hard conversations, I have them every day, but it's very interesting because most people don't. The question they ask me, number one, is what if I get sick and I don't die? That's a hard question. And having that with a parent or a spouse or a sister or brother that you're going to be responsible for is really difficult. And the most freeing thing is to actually have that conversation, or have parts of the conversation about who will take care, what do you want to have happen, why, tell me more about that, where do you want to live, how is it going to go, how are we going to pay for it? And so we talk about that daily. And the most important thing is, who are our enforcers? Who's going to be my person? There's some new legislation that says our medical providers can choose our health agents now. if we don't have an advanced healthcare directive and we don't have a conservator. So the horror is having the, I'll just use a parent, for instance, having the child that is least able to help you, be with you at the doctor's and say, I'll do it. That you want to be an advocate for yourself. You want to make sure that you have a good healthcare directive. You have a good power of attorney. We want to make sure that they're current and we have the right people in play. So how do you start that conversation? Because it's really about, we need a plan of action. What are our tools? Now, what you say sometimes is a conversation starter would be, wow, I read this book recently that my estate planner gave me, or my friend mentioned, that said, gosh, what is our emergency kit? What is it that we're going to do if there's a crisis, if you get sick, or if there's an earthquake, or, just thinking about the emergencies, because we have fires out here, we have floods, we have, snowstorms apparently in Thousand Oaks. We have lots of different weather dynamics. So starting that conversation saying, I just made a plan. What is your plan? And getting people talking. I do this all the time. People will bring their parent or their loved one in and say, this is what we have. Is it suitable? Most people are very invested in the documents that they already have. So we want to give it a checkup. I do that complimentary. So go back to the estate planner or a financial planner and just say, so what do you have on file here? And do we have everything we need if there's an emergency, if I need to step in for my parent or for my loved one? And the other thing is get plugged in with Senior Concerns. So we're local here, most of you, and Senior Concerns is a perfect place to get information. They have seminars on how to get ready. What if I have a little bit of dementia? Can I stay home? And getting those conversations going with your parents and, hey, let's go do a little seminar here and look into what the options are. Also, how about mom or dad? I'm just going to use them as an example because I'm blessed to still have my mom and her partner. What is your plan? Do you think maybe we should write it down? Let's make a plan for ourselves. It doesn't have to be fancy. We need to make sure we have a good healthcare directive, a good power of attorney, and hopefully a trust that will manage property and the like. But the most important are the emergency documents. It's like, what ifs? What if, you can have those conversations and what if this happens? I personally would like X to happen. I want to make sure I stay at my home. Say, well, what if you can't? Or what if it's, kind of going through the scenario? Like today, we're going to hear from Kelila probably that it's really expensive to stay home with carers. And I have clients that are paying over $200,000 a year for their loved one. Now, luckily they have it, but is that really the best care, socialization, all the things that we have to think about for our loved one? What if there's some other options? What if we couldn't stay home? Or what if the home can't accommodate our needs? Just magically, let's look in our view. What could we do? What are the options? And so those are the things you would talk to Kelila about and Jeff, as far as maybe we need to sell the home or rent it out or modify it. There's just lots of things to talk about. But the most important is getting the conversation going. What do I want? Okay, you have your wants. What is the plan for it? Do we have long-term care? Are we going to self-insure? That means you're paying cash out. We're going to use a retirement plan. We're going to use the equity in our home. Does that make sense? Do we have long-term care insurance? And then what are deal breakers? What are deal breakers? So my deal breaker personally is that if I knew that if I decided, okay, I have 4 daughters, so I'm going to pick one, the poor kid has to come and help me. Well, she's probably going to be, not with her family during the times, right? She's probably going to miss out in work. Is that really fair? And there's usually one, I'll just say child or loved one that will volunteer to do it, but the cost of that emotionally, financially, it's a lonely job. We want to make sure that we have those hard conversations and then say, gosh, what if we can't? Maybe we should ourselves go and look at possibilities. Go on a tour with Kelila, with someone like her and Tammy. You can go in and say, would I want this? Is this suitable for me? When might it be okay? Is it a financial decision? Is it an emotional decision? You know, not everybody has the kind of money that it takes to have those options of, you know, independently living or having caregivers in our home for the rest of our lives. We will be living longer and not well, unfortunately. And then having a family meeting. A family meeting is helpful if you have family members that are good for you, that you've selected, and say, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to reduce the stress and fear that we might have, and having everybody on board? Because many times we don't act because we're fearful. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings if I pick child A versus child B, or my friend or my lover, or all these different things. Sometimes it's good to not have a secret plan, but have a plan of action that says, gosh, I really want to have it done this way. What I would also recommend is, how about dictating or recording your voice on a tape, saying, or a little video. Now we can do a Zoom to ourselves. We can say, got it, guys. If you're watching this, I fell down and I'm probably in the hospital, and you're trying to figure out, what the heck do I do next? Do I call Terri? Do I call Jeff? Do I call Kelila? Do I call Uncle Arnie? So this is my plan. I want to stay home as long as I can, but if I can't, then I'm going to go do A, B, and C. And we just don't know how it's going to go. We might fall asleep, die in our sleep, and God bless us all. But if we don't, what is that going to look like? How do we protect ourselves from being scammed by living by ourselves? What about liability? What comes up for me a lot of times is that we employ caregivers that are lovely, but they're kind of, quote, under the table. And there are scams, or what I'll call opportunities, for when you pass away and they no longer have a job and they hurt their back trying to take care of you, then they sue the family for wage and hour, or, because you haven't properly employed someone. So those are the things that come up for me. And I just want people to know that it's good to have a plan and check it out. Check it out with your loved ones. Check it out with your financial planner, your estate planner. Say, does this make sense? So we have to figure out what our solutions are and what our deal breakers are. Sometimes I say, I don't care if you use every dollar for my care, then everybody knows. No one's going to fight with you about it. And if you run out of money, then, Medi-Cal's out there for skilled nursing, but no one wants to make that choice. The options are lovely, meaning, yes, you can get it, but do you really want to be there? Not likely. But it's a kind of an easier option is to get Medi-Cal, but you have to be in skilled nursing. And most of us growing up watching, our family members go to convalescent homes, we used to call them, right? We say, I just don't ever want to do this. So let's figure out reasons why and options instead. So what we want to do is do the what ifs, tour, if we can, alternatives. You say, I really don't want to, but if I had to, at least I know ahead of time where I might want to go. There are a lot of beautiful places today. It's like going to a hotel. It's like, maybe I should have done this earlier, right? And, we want to make sure it's fair to the family members and that no one has to make really hard choices, because they will make them and they're usually not yours. So if you can write it down, we call it life care planning. And so we have that opportunity in our firm to come in and say, hey, these are the things that I want to do. Have a little questionnaire. It's kind of a lot of fun because you're well. We don't want to do a plan in crisis. So we're going to make sure we have our advanced care directive. We want to update it periodically so it's fresh and clean. Same with your power of attorney for financials. If you got diagnosed with a serious or chronic progressive illness, you'll make choices at that point, but at least you have some background on what you want to do. And just say, gosh, you know, I just saw this webinar, or I read this article or this book. I've made a plan. What's your plan? And our loved ones usually want to play. They want to know what you want, and you get to find out what they really, really don't want. So estate plan's really important. Make sure you don't put your name on somebody else's bank account. Make sure you check you're the successor trustee or a co-trustee with your loved one. So you can manage and monitor if needed, and really be active if possible. I think people are, especially being on the internet and Zoom, you can have these fun little chats with your loved one, and you're documenting what they want, and you can use it when your sibling or someone in their family fusses with you and said, no, that's not what they want. They wanted to be buried, not cremated. Well, they paid for a cremation. Why wouldn't they still want that? Tell me more about that. We just had an interview with her before she fell, and she said, yeah, that's really what I want. I want to save money. I made this arrangement when my husband died, etc. So the most important thing is to be, I will say, in action, and make sure that we know. And I definitely would do Zooms with our family members. And that's what I think is kind of the most important thing, is get the conversation started, talk about you, what your emergency plan is, and then see what they want to do. What do you think, Jeff?
Thank you, Terry. All right. Thank you, Terry. Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Landau, and not only a real estate agent for the last 21 years, I'm a son who lost his mother last year, was with her for years as she experienced dementia. And we went through as a family everything that I'll be covering today with you from a real estate standpoint. So what considerations will you likely be faced with as you or your parents, I'll be using that interchangeably, as you or your parents grow older? And how do those factors relate to the living situations? I'm going to discuss 4 of the decisions that you'll be faced with as they relate to real estate. So including how long someone can stay in their home and what factors they should be considering. If someone can't stay in the home, do you sell the home or do you rent the home? Regardless of renting or selling, how do you prepare the home to maximize the value, especially if it needs repairs or updates? And finally, just the timing considerations of when you actually rent or sell a home. So first, you may be wondering how long you or your loved one can stay in the home. And this is a big consideration because there's a number out there that roughly 85% of people want to bring in care and stay in their home. And is staying in the home and or aging in place, is that a viable option? Maybe some home modifications are needed, like adding handrails in the showers and the bathrooms, making the home walker or wheelchair friendly. Is home care needed? Who is going to provide that? What kind of care? How often is that care going to be provided? And when you talk about who, is that going to be a family member or family members? Are you going to get outside help? Will you get licensed or unlicensed help? How often is that care needed? What care and what coverage at the home is needed? And when do you start that coverage? There's a lot of questions that have to be thought about. And then there's, the 2 big things are the 2 C's, cost and coverage. And, cost, Terry mentioned it, costs for independent care in the house can be $20,000 to $30,000 a month. deciding between licensed and unlicensed. And if you go the unlicensed route, understanding the risks, and Terry's shaking her head. So we're all going to shake our head at the unlicensed option, which our family did for a couple of years before realizing what those risks are. And then you have to think about, what kind of coverage, are you going to have when there's no caregiver? If you don't have somebody 24 hours, what happens when there's no coverage there? What happens if the caregiver goes on vacation? What if they wake up in the morning and call in sick? So you have to have all of those things thought about before anything starts, so you don't scramble that morning that something happens like that. And this comes from firsthand experience. Not only did we get away with the decision to have unlicensed care, my mom was in Leisure Village in Orange County. Almost all of her socializing when we had a caregiver was with the caregiver herself, not with any of her friends anymore. So that's a factor. So one day the caregiver happened to be working Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. She was walking the caregiver out. My mom was in her courtyard, very smooth and safe place. And the caregiver left, and my mom turned and saw a speck of dirt on the ground that she had to pick up. And as she leaned over, she fell. Fortunately, didn't get hurt. Unfortunately, couldn't get herself up. Unfortunately, life alert and cell phone were inside the house, not around her neck or on her person. Mom laid on the concrete from 5 o'clock at night until 9 o'clock in the morning until the caregiver came. So that was a sign that we needed to make a change. You can think about what's going to be your sign that you may need to be making a change. I just had somebody that I know, an older gentleman, lives on his own. And he had a heart attack while he was in his garage. And the only reason why he was alive, not only was his cleaning lady at the house at the time he had his heart attack, he was in the garage. She happened to walk in and see him. If that didn't happen, he wouldn't be here. So, these are things, that you need to think about in advance. So if you've made the decision not to be in the house anymore, then you're going to be thinking about what do you do the house? Do you do with the house? Do you keep it and rent it and have a income source, or do you sell it? So when you think about those two choices, one of the options of renting, maybe you don't feel comfortable selling the house right away. Just keep in mind, renting the home short term for a couple months is very difficult to do. And especially if it's furnished, it's even harder to rent a house that's furnished because people typically have their own furniture. Not always, but typically. The other thing to keep in mind is you can't just move back in when you want to move back in if there's a tenant that has a contract. And even after the contract expires, California just changed some rules that makes it hard to get a tenant out, even after the lease expires. Does it make financial sense? Can you do whatever the next steps are for the family by holding on to the home and renting it? It's pretty easy to estimate, the likely monthly positive cash flow. You can calculate the rent and what your carrying costs are. And if you are going to be renting the home, then you have some things to be thinking about. How is the home going to be prepared before somebody moves in? Are there repair or maintenance items that need to be taken care of before? How do those get paid for? Who is going to take care of getting those done? How do you find a tenant? How do you screen a tenant? How do you collect rent? These are all things to be thinking about. The easiest way around it is to hire a property manager that'll charge a fee, and they can certainly handle that for you. If you're going to be selling the home, a positive of selling the home is it removes a lot of uncertainty. One is how much money will we have? You'll actually know that once the home sells. And you'll also take out any kind of real estate market risk. The crystal ball question is, well, I don't know if I should sell. Where's the market going? And nobody has that answer. You can, that'll give you peace of mind once the home is sold. It takes out any kind of possibility if you have a weaker real estate market whenever it becomes time to sell in the future. In the last couple of years, from start to finish, you could get a home sold within 60 days from the thought of selling it. Back in the early 90s, 6 to 12 months, or maybe even longer, because it was a very weak real estate market. We had a lot of homes available for sale. So there's the entire range, a couple months to, possibly a year or even longer. And then again, whether you want to rent or sell, how do you prepare the home? And there are different considerations of home preparation, whether you're going to be renting or selling. Some things to keep in mind is that home prep itself is a time-consuming process. How do you decide what work to do? Where is the money best spent? You don't want to just open up a checkbook. Who do you hire to do the work? What materials do you use for the upgrades? Again, different between selling a home and renting out the home. How do you manage construction? How do you pay for it? So those are some things to be thinking about if you're thinking about selling the home at that point. And sometimes people want to sell, but they can't. I met a man named Fred in Simi Valley. He was thinking about selling his home. His wife had dementia. They were in a 2-story home. He was fearful for her safety. They had a 2-story home. It wasn't really safe for her. They both wanted to sell and be near their son in Idaho. And when I asked him why he hasn't been, moving forward with selling his home, he said, there's too much work to do. And I don't have the time or the money to put into the house because I'll be leaving too much money on the table, which was my motivation. I'm going to take about a minute to do something that's going to be self-serving, but it's a service that I offer. It's called pre-modeling, where I can help somebody fix up their home with no out-of-pocket expense, and we get paid after escrow closes. And that really helped. I had a client, the first client that I worked with, her name is Josette Wingo. She was living in Leisure Village in Camarillo. She moved into the Belmont in Thousand Oaks. Her son lived out of state in Washington State. After living at the Belmont a couple months and she was happy there, then she was ready to sell her house. And her house, it turned out, needed everything to maximize the value. It needed new kitchen, flooring, paint. They had a back patio that was falling apart. It needed a fence. And we were estimating that her house was about worth $425,000 as is. And we ended up putting $60,000 into it and sold it for $655,000. So she made extra money just by turning over the keys and having us help her. Basically, if you want to think about it like a seller flip, as opposed to an investor flipping the home, she ended up making a lot more money doing that. And it was a very easy process. So the last thing that I will cover is timing. When do you rent the house? When do you sell the house? First of all, as Terri said, it's a conversation that you can have in advance so the parent knows what their wishes are. You want to give somebody preferably as much autonomy as possible. Make sure that the children or trustee or anybody else that is helping the parent, make sure that they understand the parent's wishes. So they could sell right away, or you could wait until the parent gets settled in wherever they're going to be going, and they have peace of mind because it's this, I've been living in this house 10, 20, 30, 40 years. What's it going to be like moving? And after they moved, they found it really is as good as promised, hopefully, and then they're ready moving forward with renting or selling the home. We got really lucky when we sold my mom's home in Orange County. When I was driving her up to LA, she looked at me and said, I'm going to make this work. So we got lucky. So you can increase your odds by having the conversation in advance and just, understanding your parents' wishes. So hopefully I've given you some things to think about. And happy to discuss offline at a time that is convenient for you if you have any questions. And now let's hear from Kelila Heller.
Mute. Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you, Terry. I love working with both of you. The three of us are great partners helping families figure out what to do next. So I'm going to talk today just about that spectrum of care, long-term care, talk a little bit about home care, talk about assisted living and a Medicare, Medi-Cal, and about senior placement, and talk about what things cost, because I think that's a really important part of your calculation and part of your planning is to know, because people are often surprised at the costs, especially the past 6 months. You know, prices have gone up on everything. I want to give a little story of a client I just had. This client was Joanna. She's living in Louisiana, and her dad, Barry, was in Ventura. So I'll back up in that, you know, my company is a placement agency. We help families find assisted living. We work a little bit like social workers and real estate agents for senior living and guide families through the whole process. And, but we certainly first help them if they need care in the home, we're going to help them with that. So I'm going to be addressing that. But when this daughter, Joanna, called me, her dad had been living alone. He was only 79, which in our world, my world's pretty young. A very smart attorney, but he's living by himself and he's in and out of the hospital. He's got kidney issues and now he's got short-term memory loss. And she hadn't seen him for a while. She came out here for a wedding and he went in the hospital again for kidney surgery. And the social workers and case managers told her, your dad cannot be alone now. She went to his house to see how he's doing. It was so overwhelming. There must have been 4 years of unopened mail there. And she just said, she called me and said, you know, dad doesn't have enough money. He's probably has around $5,000 a month. He can't afford to have home care with him. He needs care around the clock. So we were able within a few days to find him a really great place in Ventura that could take care of him for $5,000 a month. And he actually was able to recover enough that he could really participate in the community and is thriving there. So we always love the happy story when we move someone in. But the first thing when people call us is often needing home care. So there's so many things to consider with it. You know, first thing they might look, and as Terry talked about, you know, maybe the kids can do it, you know, if they're not working. But even if they are working and as parents, care needs increase. Do you want to be changing someone's diapers or helping them with their shower? Can you get them out of bed? And then when we have memory loss and dementia come in, that's especially hard to deal with. Most family members are not equipped to manage this as it increases. So Terry mentioned employing caregivers, and so did Jeff. So here's the scoop on employing people. Most people have not had caregivers in their home. They haven't had employees. What they don't know is in the state of California, there are no independent contractors in home care. So by law, you need to be protecting yourself by following the employment law and paying employment taxes and following the rules and regulations. And also you need to have workers' compensation insurance on that employee. It's a rider's on your homeowner's insurance policy. It's really important to have that because people get hurt working in the home, especially if they're lifting your loved one in and out of bed or doing any kind of physical work like that. So we suggest people hire a licensed bonded insured caregiving agency. Those now cost about $35 an hour. So we're thinking about money for a loved one. Think about 4 hours a day of care. That's $4,200 a month. And now if you need 8 hours a day of care, maybe 2 4-hour shifts, because that's a minimum shift you can get these days. That's $8,400 a month. And when you need full-time live-in care, like Jeff mentioned, $25,000 to $30,000 a month. It's not very many people that can manage that with their estate, or their estate's going to get wiped out really quickly. So, and there's so much more to consider with managing care in the home because you're managing the caregivers and the home and all the costs associated. So a lot of people are coming to us more and more to look at different types of assisted living, because that's much less expensive than those. Once you get over 6 hours a day of care, assisted living becomes a lot more manageable with the costs. So benefits of moving to assisted living, they're all licensed with the state, all assisted living communities. You have large communities, which, as Terry's mentioning, they're like senior resort living now. They're beautiful with wonderful food, full menu with waiters, all the transportation's covered, all the house cleaning's covered, all the activities, and there's staff around the clock in those places. The large communities have 100 residents. They even have beauty salons and exercise studios. And it relieves a lot of stress for families when a senior chooses to move into assisted living. And so these large assisted livings range in Ventura County. The least expensive locations for a studio apartment would be around $3,000 a month. And that probably ranges to like $8,500 a month for a private studio, for a 1-bedroom. Care costs are additional. When you're looking at memory care, the range is $4,500 to $5,500 for a shared room and $6,000 to $11,000 for a private room. But that's 24/7 care, and it's much higher staffing when you're working with people who need memory care. And then in that arena of licensed assisted living, there's also residential care homes that are called board and care homes. That range runs $3,500 to $4,500 for a shared room and $6,000 to $9,500 for a private room. Now, in a residential care home, there's only 6 seniors with 2 caregivers. It's a very high level of care, and those prices are 24/7. They don't get added on as people need more help. And the cost for care in a licensed assisted living is tax deductible. These are not skilled nursing facilities. These are not convalescent homes, because so every day I hear people say, don't ever put me in a nursing home. Well, they're thinking of what we now call skilled nursing facilities, because it used to be that's all there was. And those facilities are really designed for short-term rehab. Mom falls and breaks her hip, and she gets surgery at the hospital, and then she goes for 2 to 6 weeks to a rehab. And from there, she either goes back home or maybe she goes to assisted living, depending what her needs are. So when we're working with a family, we are doing a whole intake to find what are the care needs, what's the budget, what is the location, what are the needs of the senior, socially and emotionally, and what are the needs of the family. And then we're like matchmakers. We're putting together, here's a short list of places. Let's go out and tour them to find what's going to work for you. So a question I often get is, what do Medicare and Medi-Cal cover? Because there's a lot of confusion about that. So Medicare is your home, is your health care. That covers doctor's visits, a hospital stay, a skilled nursing rehab stay. It will cover, for a short term, sending a physical therapist to the home or a nurse to check on a wound. But it doesn't cover day-to-day home care, like helping someone get up and bathing and helping fix food. That's what a home care agency covers. Medi-Cal is designed for low-income seniors, and that's the same as the Medicaid program, which is the federal program. So that program covers more medication costs. It can provide some care in the home. And for the highest needs seniors who have no money left, it does provide a bed in a shared room in a skilled nursing facility. So that's a medical facility. It's designed for rehab, but we do have some seniors living there long-term. I tell families, if you're considering this, you need to go visit those places and know that the highest end ones don't take long-term Medi-Cal patients. So you need to visit the places before you make that kind of a decision. And we can help you with that as well. We can talk to you about what skilled nursings cover Medi-Cal and which ones are better than others. Medi-Cal does have a very limited program called Assisted Living Waiver. It's only in LA County right now. It helps cover assisted living, but you have to be you can't have any more than $1,500 a month income coming in and no more than $2,000 in savings. So it's very limited. It takes about 6 months to get into it. That program is coming to Ventura County, so we'll be a resource for that. So again, when if a family member is looking to see that, you know, maybe home care isn't going to be an option for them, or the children can't take care of the parents and they're looking at senior living, you want to, if you're going to talk to a senior placement agency like ours, you want to look for ones that are local, that have their certification as administrators for assisted living, and that have a contract with every assisted living and every memory care and every board and care, which my company has in Ventura County. We also cover the San Fernando Valley. Our services are free, and we're paid a fee by the assisted living communities or homes when someone moves in. But again, because we cover all the places, we're an objective source, and we help families through that process, which can be super emotional, from moving and downsizing everything. You know, besides figuring out the right place to move, moving and downsizing, we're going to rely on our partners like Jeff, and we have lots of people who can help with veterans benefits, how we're going to pay for this move and pay to live in senior living. We also help negotiate the best rates for our clients. So you won't have a concern about paying more when you work with a licensed placement agency. And, you know, it's just really, all of us are here to help with ease the stress on families, and doing this pre-planning and understanding what things cost really can help you make those hard decisions. And the end result, we hope, are happy seniors who are socialized and getting better care, and a happy family, because families breathe such a sigh of relief when they start to put these pieces into place. And I love the work that I do with my team. We have a team of 6 people here in Ventura County in the San Fernando Valley that are helping families every day to make these decisions and find the right place to move. Jeff, you want to open it up?
Yep, thank you. Well, we promised to get you out in an hour. We have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. We see that there are 2 questions that have been typed in, so you could always type in or put a question in the chat. The first one is from Matthew. He wrote regarding selling his mom's home. She's still alive. She bought it for $18,500 and it appreciated just a pinch. It's worth over it's worth over $1 million now. And so, Matthew, your question is about capital gains taxes, I would imagine, or any other taxes involved with the sale of that home. I'll answer part of that. I'll let Terri answer as well. Upon the passing of your mother, and assuming that the trust is structured properly and you're the next owner of it, you would get what's called a step up in tax basis. So you would, whatever the value of the home is on date of death, that would be your value of the property. So the $18,500 is gone, and then whatever the current value is on the date of your mom's passing, that is what your tax basis would be. And if you sold it the same day afterwards, you would basically have no capital gains to pay. Terri, is anything that I may have missed or that could use a little bit better explanation?
Yeah, that's one of the factors that we look at. You know, check with your CPA as well. But sometimes we have partners and, you know, married persons. And when the first one dies, it eliminates, you get a full step up in basis for the 100% of the house. And that makes it really an easier decision because you have to look at the capital gains. My parents bought their house for $13,500 in Granada Hills way back in the day. And so that is a big factor to look at. Maybe there might be an option to buy downsize and move the low property taxes with the parent. And So there are a lot of different factors, but yes, there's some capital gains that you need to manage there. And sometimes maybe you do a reverse mortgage or some other option. It's really looking at, I just advocate looking at options because maybe it makes sense. And when she passes, then, the money will be paid back. If you leave the residence, that's more problematic. So we have to look at all those matters, but definitely capital gains. It looks like in that scenario will need to be paid unless, and I think that if they're super low income, check with your CPA, it might be entirely eliminated. So you have to be super low income. So
And as Terry mentioned also, Matthew, if the concern is tapping into the equity, which you didn't mention, but if your mom needs money now, as Terry mentioned, a reverse mortgage, which I can't really speak to a lot about, though what I can say is that in the early 90s, they had a really bad rap for good reasons because they weren't great. Now they serve a very good purpose, and that is a way, if your mom wants to stay in her home and you need to tap some money, a reverse mortgage could be a good option for her. Or, there's always an equity line also. You can speak to a lender. The three of us have great lenders that we all work with if you need a recommendation for somebody to explain those options for you.
Okay, I'm going to read the second question.
Yes, exactly. That's
so from Patricia, my dad moved to Oakmont and Oxnard. He's happy there. He now needs more care and he needs a nurse. If he needs a nurse, they can't do it due to the licensing there. So he's got a long-term care policy that covers his care. Thank goodness. Not very many people have those, and they're really important. We're trying to determine where he goes from here. He has Parkinson's and is deteriorating. So yes, there are lots of places where he could move. We do that every day. We move people from large assisted livings to smaller locations that are going to be a better fit for their needs and give them all the care they need. So my suggestion is, Patricia, give us a call, because what we'll do is we'll do an intake and, we'll look at 50 places and narrow your choices down to 5. And then we'll take you out on tour on those top places that could possibly would work for your parent. So there's a lot of good places. He doesn't have to move to a skilled nursing facility to get the care he needs. Terry, do you have any?
Yeah, I have a little ad there is that many of my clients do not tap into their long-term care because they're afraid they're going to use it up. And that allows people to use it while they're at home, for the short term, I'll call it the first couple of years, if they're able to afford care at home. And then they move to, these other options of living situations. So there are definitely probably a board and care, but Kelila will talk about that more often than I are better suited to talk about that. But many of my clients with more in need of more intimate care, I'll say, day-to-day, one-on-one, the board and cares are usually a great option.
And there's really nice board and cares now. Maybe 50% of our business is helping people with that because people are aging and so many people are living to be 100 now. And when you hit 95, you're usually needing some help. I mean, my mother's been in a board and care in Thousand Oaks for 3.5 years, and she just gets superb care. It was really a good choice for her.
Can you take on that next question by Sally?
Yeah. So you're wondering why Sally asked, why are rates negotiable and not fixed at different facilities? So for the large assisted living facilities, the rates depend. It's like on occupancy. If the place is filled up, the rates are going to be higher. If there's a lot of openings, the rates will be lower because they want to get filled. It's like renting an apartment. So you can imagine during COVID, there was a lot of vacancies. So the rates were really low. So, but there's other things we can teach you about negotiating and where you can negotiate. Usually care costs are not negotiable, but that's what we help our families do. And because we work with all these facilities all the time, sometimes we can get you special deals for care. So that's in the large facilities. in the small, and usually they post their pricing, but that is changing month to month. In the small facilities, their prices are not posted. And so that's where you really need a good agent who has a contract with every single place to make sure you're getting a fair rate. And again, there's some negotiation with these small locations as well, especially if they have more than one room open. But we're always trying to help these communities stay filled so that they can stay in business and continue to offer that service.
Thank you. So Jamie wrote, how does it work with the home and finances when one spouse is still home and the other is needing care?
Sometimes that's a really hard balance.
Oh, okay.
I have to say, because number one, if you're the caregiving spouse versus the cared for spouse, that's really hard on your body, on yourself, things of that sort too. So you have to factor those things in, and look at how are we going to function. Some people move together to assisted living, I would think. Kelila, what do you find?
Yeah, no, sometimes we'll move people together. They can share a room and then you actually save a lot of money. Say one senior is really independent still and is going to go do all the classes, and the other one might need quite a bit of help. But you're only paying rent for one person, and then you pay a second person fee, and then you pay the care costs. But that does save money for a couple when they live together in an assisted living. There's other kind of scenarios. I'm working with a family right now where the wife's moving to the memory care portion, the husband's moving to the independent portion. So they're in the same building. He can see her every day, but he's 86 and he's just going downhill. He can't be up all night with her because she gets up all night long. She has so much memory loss. So, that's a good solution. It's hard to, we don't ever want to separate a couple, but sometimes you have to do that. This next, Patricia asked about 6 bedrooms. That is this. So a boarding care or a residential care home, that's a 6-bedroom facility. It's only 6 seniors. That's the maximum that can live there, with 2 caregivers and an owner. They're privately owned homes, but they're licensed with the state, and the MDs, nurses, physical therapy, you have all the services coming to the homes, including hospice. And that's what we help you figure out, because there are, in Ventura County, there's over 100 residential care homes, these 6-bed locations.
And Kelila and Tammy have in-depth knowledge, because I would be out in the community. I would, knock on doors, say hi to people, and I'd call and say, hey, I found one on this street. She goes, oh yeah, the owner's name is Bob, and she'd start telling me about them. And after about 10 or 12 times, I stopped calling her because I figured that she knew everybody. Looks like those are the last questions. Any other questions that have come up for anybody? Feel free to type it in, or. Okay. Oh, one more came up. When does someone go into hospice?
Terri, you want to answer that?
Certainly. That is actually a choice that is made. And it's usually based on a condition where you're not going to get better. You are, the analysis from the medical provider is that you will die within 6 months or so. So many people are deciding that I would like to die more naturally. I don't want heroic measures. You speak to your physician and they will certify you for hospice. There are facilities that are hospice based, but it's really a Medicare determination, and your assistance is, you have skilled nursing nurses that come and check on you and care and things of that sort. And it's covered under Medicare, but it's limited. So you might be doing hospice at home because you're choosing not to do further care for yourself, meaning heroic measures and life-sustaining procedures. Some people enter hospice and then they rally and get better, and then they're off hospice. You can go in and out. Most people at the end of life choose hospice so that they can lovingly and with palliative assistance can pass with ease, I'll call it.
Yeah, it's a really compassionate route. You don't want to wait too long. You want to check with your MD. If you think your loved one might qualify, at least to find out or to talk to, we can all give you referrals for really good local hospice agencies. I work with them every single day. And you just, like I said, you don't want to wait too long because you've got excellent nurses that come in and provide all the care. You have a bathing aide that comes in and Medicare pays for
Mhm.
all the supplies with it, not all the bed and the nursing. They don't pay for the day-to-day care. That's a
Right.
home caregiver or a family member that provides that.
Yeah, they don't provide custodial care, but they do the, maybe administration of pain meds and things of that sort as well. So there's another question here. Does Kaiser work with residential care homes?
Well, Kaiser usually sends people to us to help you find residential care homes. Kaiser doesn't pay for that because that's assisted living. Kaiser would pay, if you're a Kaiser patient, you're going to be on hospice, they will pay for the hospice services to come in. And you can pick your hospice on Kaiser. But again, any medical HMO, or MDs that you're working with, they might be able to tell you about some of the assisted livings or the residential care homes. But if you want the most up-to-date information, you want to talk with a local placement agent like ourselves, who's actually touring with clients. That's why we really know the homes. Besides the fact that our mothers live in them and have lived in them, is we're every day in and out touring clients at all these different locations and also checking in with other healthcare professionals about them.
Great questions.
So Jeff, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I was just wondering if there are any other questions. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
residential care homes. Let's go with one other question, and maybe while you're answering this, Kelila, Joanna can put our contact information up on the screen in case anybody needs.
Oh, yeah.
Question to clarify, do residential care homes bring the patients to Kaiser appointments, or do Kaiser physicians come to the facilities?
So the homes do not bring patients to appointments anymore. We used to have that, but that's not happening anymore. And Kaiser physicians come to the facilities. I have very limited experience. There's maybe one that comes out in the Ventura County area. Typically, they don't, but I have heard that there's maybe one that's coming out to see some facilities, and I would be able to tell you who that is if you give me a call.
Okay.
But Kaiser is an HMO, so it's a little more limited on the services that you get.
Joanna, are you able to share our phone numbers on the screen?
I need screen share enabled
Okay.
really quickly.
Okay, while you're
There we
doing
go.
that, Janine asked, and is long-term care insurance worth it and useful?
There are new long-term care insurance policies now that are hybrids of of life insurance and long-term care. They're really good, and any of the three of us can give you superb agents that are really up on that. Everyone should look into it, because you're seeing now how much it costs at end of life and as you're elderly and need help. So you really want to have that set up as part of your planning.
Absolutely. And you do it earlier, it's less expensive, and you've provided for that self-insuring portion of it. So you know that you could stay at home for a period of time, and then you're going to enter an appropriate assisted living or the like as we go forward.
And Terri, are those typically $250,000 of coverage, or is that just as much coverage as you want to pay for?
I think it's a calculation. I have some people that might get 200,000 of permanent insurance, where they have a rider or a provision that allows them to source that death benefit early. So you can
Okay.
actually figure out, based on your age and your, how much you have, and you work with your financial planner, your estate planner, and say, this is how much we want to make sure we have, so that we have choices.
Okay, so there are options with that.
It varies. So.
If you want to reach out to whoever invited you to get some contacts of people that can help you with long-term care policies. We all know really good people. Well,
Great
thank you
questions.
both for being here. We're keeping it right around an hour. Hopefully you found it beneficial. We are going to be sending out a recording in case you want to watch again or share it with anybody. And you have our contact information here if we can be a resource now or in the future.
And let us know what topics you want to hear about. We're happy
That
to
as
do this
well.
again. Thank
We'd
you
love
all.
to hear that. So we can do future
Thanks,
sessions.
everybody.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
today.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.